Dominique Dawson, an Emmy nominee for Swarm. Her career has included In the Cut, Grown Folks, Colin in Black and White, and DMZ, among other projects. Dominique, congratulations on your Emmy nomination. I wanted to ask you guys just to start, like, how did you use costumes, I guess, to track Dre's evolution, as a character throughout the show, and like what we kind of see happen with her and stuff? But how did you start with that using the costumes?
Yeah, well, starting off, she definitely is just using the means that she has to, dress herself. It's strictly, just survival. She steals clothes from her sister. It's all about just comfort. It's really not about self-expression initially. And as she loses her sister and she kind of begins to evolve into this other version of herself, she gets to have access to more, because now she's stealing, she's making money, she's stripping, she's doing all these different things. So that really opened the floodgates for us to be able to play with, vintage pieces, designer pieces, like anything was up for grabs for her. And so we wanted to take that tomboy style and really kind of, let it play out and evolve into that designer space. But I think what's interesting is as she goes from, location to location, so New Orleans, Atlanta, Houston, she makes it up to Seattle, like she's all over the map. And she's really influenced by those environments. And so you really get to see her, just playing with her identity, trying things on and seeing, is this me? Does this feel right? And she's never had this freedom before to kind of self-express in this way. So we had a lot of fun with that. And she does, at the peak of it, she does super heightened femininity with the stripper stuff, but then she, eventually goes in to find her true identity, really as a man, and as this Tony identity. So, yeah.
You mentioned the stripper stuff and the exotic, and her being an exotic dancer. I guess like I think that's an episode. We first see her that I believe in episode 2, right? Which is Honey. When we first see her, I guess, how did you want that to look versus like when we see her later in the episode, while she's probably been dancing a little longer, you know what I mean? Or like kind of like as time has passed, like how did you want her initial impression to look for starters, I guess?
Yeah, I felt like she went in with like this idea of what strippers are supposed to be. So she went for this most sparkly, extra, like I compare it to like Michael Jackson's glove. Like she just wanted to do the most. So we put so many rhinestones on that piece and it was custom made for her. But her dancing didn't match the outfit, which I felt like that contrast was so great, because initially you see her and you're like, oh, I love this. And then you're like, oh, you are an odd bird. And then we were able to kind of track her into kind of just, she's not putting on as much. She's wearing this animalistic metallic bikini that's kind of raw, but now she's embodying the stripper mentality. So she doesn't need all the bells and whistles because she's walking that walk,
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really cool. Did you like, and then I guess for the other dancers, like how did you kind of like dress all of them and like, like how did you kind of figure out what they should look like, and how much of that stuff did you have to build versus like sourcing, I guess, too?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had dancers of all different sizes, and that was like so refreshing. I love being able to cater to, thicker women and plus size women. And so for those women, I built a lot of their pieces because I really wanted to cater to their specific form. And, with stripper culture, there's just this desire, they get money fast. And there's this desire for designer, and you know, just living this opulent life, they can control that, right? They kind of can't really control what happens in the club, but when they're outside, you know, like they got their special little gear. So I really looked to making sure they all had like the best jewelry, best shoes. We sourced this like Moschino trench that was metallic, so that when they show up and they do these parties outside of the club, they're decked out, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like in the club, they're a little more, you know, they're still put together and it's still outfits and fun, but it's just stripped down.
Right. You mentioned before, like how like the different, how Dre kind of trying to figure out different looks based on like where she is, or kind of like how like her environment is kind of impacting her, I guess, a little bit. And I guess how did that doing contemporary costumes too, I guess, how did that kind of like, how did you research that? Or like, are you thinking about the cities and stuff and how people are like dressed? I guess, like, how do you kind of approach that to make sure it does feel authentic, but like is like also true to the character?
Yeah. I really felt like wherever she was, she did a lot of people watching, and she would kind of stake out, because she was sleeping in her car essentially, and motels. So she would kind of stake out and lay low and kind of observe her surroundings. And she is an incredible chameleon, but she's able to observe and identify and just tap into the core of a space, of a location, and then put on, you know, what feels natural to that space. So, you know, there's always still an awkwardness to her. She, I don't think fashion is like in her blood, like in her DNA, but I do think that she's able to attach herself to, oh, this is what somebody else wore. Let me, you know, go with that.
Do you have like, I guess, what was it like? Sounds like you probably had a lot of these conversations with Dominique, also an Emmy nominee as well for playing Dre. I guess, like, what were your, like, what did you guys discuss, and like how did that help like you guys kind of find the looks together, I guess, or like how did you like work with her and collaborate with her to make sure that this looks as well as, you know, as good as it does, and like, you know, like kind of succeeds like it does?
Right. Well, Dom, it's great because it was Dom and Dom. We just clicked, and she is so invested in the psychology of her character, and she's very open and articulate and able to, you know, really explain her way of digesting the script, her perspective, right? And so a lot of the discussions that we had were really, you know, what's her inner monologue at this certain moment, you know? And even though some things might be logical, like a lot of times, if you're going to go rob somebody's house or kill somebody, you might go kind of like, you know, black or incognito. For her, she was like, no, I've been under the radar for so long. I'm bold. I'm out here. I'm going to wear whatever I want, what empowers me when I go and take care of business. So that opened the floodgates to killing in a cat suit, killing in, you know, a neon kind of tight shirt and a puffy vest. Like there's, you just allow, like I really allowed her to play and just finally express herself, you know?
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. And Dominique Dawson, Emmy nominee for Swarm. Thank you so much for chatting.
Yeah.